I sat staring at the striplit conference room table, my hands sweating right through my shirt cuffs. The ceiling fans spun tiredly, pushing sticky Mumbai heat around as the panel members wrote in silence. A clock ticked too loudly. I could see my own reflection, small and hunched in the tinted window. One of the professors, Dr. Vardhan, tapped his pen and finally looked up at me with weary irritation. So Sahil, you actually believe your algorithm can create art? He wasn't amused, it was accusation, not a question. I cleared my throat trying to steady my voice. I looked at the panel, 5 of them, 3 men, 2 women, all in formal khakis and saris, lips pressed tight as iron. Yes, sir, not just mimicking brushstrokes or filters. It understands creative rules and applies them in context, like an evolving artist would. The other woman, Dr. Shilpa, coughed into her sleeve and scribbled something. Dr. Vardhan actually chuckled, soft, sharp. And next you'll teach your program to compose poetry and write novels, I suppose. A laugh escaped the group. It bounced around the bleak room, meant to disarm me. I caught myself biting the inside of my cheek. The pitch of my humiliation rose behind my eyes. Well, why not? I heard myself say, softer than I meant. The laughter paused. Dr. Vardhan spread his palms, turning to the others for a shared look of exasperation. I'm sorry, Sahil, he said finally, voice slathered in that official politeness, but your project lacks academic rigor. It's more, he hesitated, searching for the most hurtful phrase, wishful thinking than practical research. And self-indulgent, Dr. Shilpa added without looking at me. Was I sweating, or were these just salty tears refusing to fall? My mouth went dry. I wanted to plead, to explain the hours I'd poured over neural nets and color spectrums, the silent thrill of seeing a bot adjust its own brush technique. Instead, I just nodded, face already burning. I stood and gathered my notes. Thank you, I muttered it into my chest. No one looked up as I left. Just before the door closed, I heard the start of a quiet joke and laughter again, quieter this time, almost gentle in its contempt. I stepped into the dusty hallway, blinking against the fluorescent glare. Students bustled past, chattering in English and Marathi, slapping file folders against their thighs. From a distance, I could recognize the teasing in their voices. There goes the artist, someone else. Which paintbrush does your computer prefer, Sahil? Another burst of laughter. I pulled my backpack tight and darted out onto the quad. The campus smelled of hot stone and frying samosas. I felt invisible and exposed all at once. It was my last chance and they'd decided I was unworthy. The humiliation trailed me home, up 5 flights of chipped concrete, past Mrs. Jane's wrinkled frown as she eyed my slumped shoulders. I let the stale air of our apartment swallow me. Mira, my older sister, was at the dinner table scrolling her phone. How did your review go? She asked, not really caring. It didn't, I shrugged, avoiding her gaze. Our mother came bustling out with a tray of chapatis, her silver bangles clinking. They turned you down, her face twisted, part concern, mostly disbelief. And after all those nights. Beta, you can't live in dreams forever. Mira snorted, we told you nah, there's no job in painting computers. People want doctors, software developers, real things. My father's sigh drifted from the living room. I caught his eyes for a second, tired, gentle disappointment. Sahil, you're smart, why waste it chasing nonsense? Their judgment fell softly, ruthlessly, like mosquito bites you couldn't scratch. I excused myself and shut my bedroom door, letting the thick dusk settle on my skin. My laptop was already humming, screen aglow with failed models and color wheels. I traced my own lines of code, the digital DNA of my one wild hope, and pressed my forehead to the table. But I couldn't stop. Even as their words drilled in, ridiculous, useless, self-indulgent, I found myself picking up the work again. The only way forward was through. If they thought I was dreaming, then I'd just have to dream alone. There was no graduation ceremony for me, not really. No campus placement interviews, no casual congratulations. Yet each night I drifted back to my code like a stray dog. My friends grew scarce. Rohan joined an IT major in Singapore. Priya worked for a consultancy, while I stayed behind, teaching coding boot camps for pocket money and refining my project into something that felt alive. The city itself seemed to mock me, every giant LED billboard flashing software jobs, every family friend's question over tea, what are you doing these days? It was always the same, my answer met with blank stares or careful sympathy. The worst was my cousin Arav, who would loudly narrate entire memes at my expense at family dinners. What did the failed artist say to the computer? Paint me a job, he cackled, even as I felt myself shrink at the table. At night, Mumbai glowed restless, electricity humming through high rises, rickshaw horns carrying through the black warmth. I let it lull me into my routine, 2 hours of paid work, then hours of wrestling with convolutional nets, tweaking the smallest variables, painting virtual canvases that no one wanted to see. One monsoon night, thunder rumbling over the city, I almost gave in. The AI's latest sketches had plateaued. They looked like clever imitations, not real inspirations. I stared at my code through blurred eyes, cursing the professors, my family, myself. Why couldn't I be someone else, sensible, successful, safe? But just as I was closing my laptop, a new idea flickered to life, a way to give the AI a rudimentary sense of aesthetic feedback, like a painter judging their own technique. It was a small shift. I barely noticed my fingers as they typed, eyes wide in the storm-lit room. By dawn, something impossible had happened. The AI produced a vivid composition unlike anything I'd seen, a blend of geometry and chaos, color and absence. I could feel a pulse returning to my own veins. Maybe it wasn't useless, maybe it just wasn't ready. Time stretched, years blurred. When I wasn't scraping rent from gigs, I was reaching out to open research communities online. Forums replaced old friends, strangers from Berlin to Bangalore intrigued by my updates, people who for the first time wanted to hear about my ridiculous dream. I posted a clip of my AI painting real-time on a subreddit. At first, nothing. Then a message pinged. An art tech startup in Berlin wanted to try licensing my neural artist as a demo. It paid little, but they sent over a contract. I could barely afford the legal fees to check it, but it was something. My parents grudgingly stopped bringing up exams, then started asking quiet questions about that Berlin project. Mira even mentioned it to a neighbor. My brother's working with people abroad now. Her voice was small, hesitant. The next years sped up. One collaboration led to another. My AI became a plugin for digital artists on a major design platform. I was invited to New York for an arts tech conference, my first time leaving the country. They paid for my hotel. I wore the only suit I had and stood behind a podium, while people jotted frantic notes as I demoed a live painting session. After the talk, a silver-haired woman, famous architect as it turned out, shook my hand. "You've made something that can teach us new ways to see the world," she said. I felt something inside me mend a little. Startup recruiters started reaching out, venture capitalists circled. The AI, once a fragile digital fledgling, became a small revolution, studied, debated, even pirated. Suddenly, job offers filled my inbox. London, San Francisco, Singapore. I chose Mumbai. I never wanted to leave home, not for good. A studio offered me a consulting room in Pau, sunlight filtering through their glass facade. I hired 2 other engineers, people who got it, who wanted to teach computers to make not just sense but meaning. Slowly, quietly, my name drifted out, not the punchline but the guy in tech journals, speaking at summits, designing workshops for students still bold enough to dream outside the safe lines. Still, the wound was there. Each success sent a tremor along the memory, those faces in the committee room, those jokes at dinner. I avoided going home, even as my mother called more often. From my window in Pau, I watched the city change, smog shifting over towers and slums, monsoons slicking every surface new. Sometimes I glimpsed the boy I'd been, haunted by his own absurd hope. It was a decade after that first committee rejection when the university invited me back. I almost deleted their email. The provost wrote, "Our annual tech festival would be honored to have one of India's leading AI engineers as keynote speaker." I called my mother. She was breathless. I told them, "My son will return, you must come, everyone is waiting." Even Mira, now married and mother to a chubby boy, sent a message, "Can I bring Arav to your talk? He pretends he always believed in you." I stared at their words, feeling the old humiliation and the strange, unhurried patience that had carried me this far. I said yes. I drove to campus that day through morning rush, Mumbai's traffic, a tidal crush of rickshaws, suited office-goers, schoolchildren in pressed shirts. The university gates looked the same. Ivy crawling the crumbling wall, a faded sign swinging overhead. Students streamed in, their laughter and arguments the same as ever. Inside the lobby, an oversized banner screamed my name, Keynote. Sahil Joshi, AI and art visionary. My photo, 10 years younger, thinner, smiled nervously from above the crowd. A volunteer hustled me to the green room. Through cracked windows, I saw faces I recognized, classmates, professors, even Dr. Vardhan, white-haired now, scanning the program. In the audience, a clustered family sat near the front, my mother in a new blue sari, Mira with her son on her lap, even Arav, now leaner but still grinning. When they called my name, an easy clamour greeted me, cheers, not jeers. Still, I felt nausea in my throat, one step at a time. At the podium, the lights blinded me. I took the mic and spoke as simply as I could, of nights hunched over failed code, of the loneliness. Of the laughter, at first outside me, then echoing in my own head until stubbornness, patience, curiosity pulled me through. I talked about the Berlin calls, New York, the first paycheck, the first artist to send a thank you message. My hands shook, but I kept going. To dream is to risk ridicule, I said, and looked straight at Dr. Varden, who pressed his lips taut. But patience can outlast mockery if you keep the dream moving. Then I queued up the demo. The lights shifted and my team wheeled out the setup, a digital canvas projected onto the auditorium wall, my AI running on a custom rig. I could hear whispers, curiosity, skepticism, a few snorts. A camera fed a live image of the audience directly into the AI's engine, and the algorithm began painting brief, hesitant lines, growing in complexity. It didn't just copy faces, the code captured moods. The open awe of students, the skepticism in the professor's eyes, the curious tilt of a child's head, layers of bold color formed expressions, relationships that shimmered between abstraction and truth. The auditorium fell silent. Even the cynics at the back looked up from their phones. I watched my mother's mouth fall open, Mira's hand reach for her heart, Arav's cocky smile frozen. The painting kept evolving. Sometimes it looked like the city, a burst of rain and traffic honks, glass towers trickling orange dusk. Sometimes it looked like a human face breaking and reforming. I explained quietly as it worked, it's not just making images. It sees pattern, feeling, context, and it teaches us to see too. When it finished, applause broke out, genuine, stunned, raw. I turned to see Dr. Varden on his feet, arms crossed, eyes shining with something I hadn't seen in a decade, respect or at least recognition. Students crowded around as I stepped off stage, peppering me with questions about code, creativity, frustration. In the swirl of excitement, I caught Dr. Shilpa's eye. She nodded, once small, tight, but real. When the crowd thinned, my family approached. My mother didn't speak. She just pulled me tight to her chest, her fingers combing through my hair. Mira cried, whispering I'm proud, I'm sorry, over and over. Even Arav, red-faced, managed awkwardly. You showed them, ya, didn't think you had it in you. The sun was setting as we walked out, painting the quad golden. A new class of students sprawled on the grass, laptops aglow, arguing ideas and laughing, just as we once had before the world taught us to be careful. I felt lighter, not because I'd proved them wrong, but because I had moved through the shadow of that old humiliation and found something true on the other side. Back home that night, my mother set an extra roti on my plate and kept refilling my tea. My father actually asked about the demo, his questions hesitant, almost reverent. Mira's son sat on my knee and demanded to teach the computer to draw dinosaurs. I watched the city lights shimmer through the window, heard children shouting on the lane below, tasted the spice of my mother's food. The ache, the old shame, the hunger for acceptance had softened. My family's laughter filled the small flat, and I saw that, without knowing it, I had carried their doubt with patience and returned with something not just to prove but to share. And in that, the dream finally felt real. Not just for me, but for all of us.